Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, let's get right into it. Adult friendships. You ever catch yourself thinking about old friends, maybe wondering what happened?
Yeah, or maybe you're in a new phase, new city, whatever, and making those like deep connections feels harder than it used to.
Exactly. And if that's you, you are definitely not alone.
It's a really common thing, actually.
Right.
This feeling that adult friendships just play by different rules compared to, when we were kids. And that's pretty much what we're digging into today.
Right. We want to unpack why things shift, why friendships work differently as we get older.
And we've been looking at this really interesting perspective, a source that offers a kind of fresh take. It's not about like giving up on friendships, but more about understanding how they naturally evolve.
Yeah, exactly. We dove into this chapter that explores these often unspoken truths about adult friendship, and it brings up this idea called the let them theory.
Let them theory. Okay.
Now, hold on. This isn't about becoming a hermit or anything.
Yeah.
It's more about getting why friendships change, and maybe, just maybe, cutting ourselves some slack about it.
Makes sense.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do we start? Maybe with that big shift the source talks about.
Yeah, okay. So the source makes this really smart point early on. We tend to carry our childhood ideas of friendship into adulthood, right?
Ah,
We sort of expect those tight bonds to just stick around, stay the same.
for sure.
But the reality, as this source argues, is that friendship really transforms. It goes from being what they call a group sport,
Oh, I like that. Group sport.
yeah, to being much more of an individual one.
That group sport thing really hits home. Thinking back to being a kid, friendships felt, I don't know, almost automatic.
Clearly.
You were just constantly around the same people class, the bus, the neighborhood.
Shared environment, basically.
Yeah, and you were all hitting similar milestones around the same time, too. Birthday parties, school stuff, summer break.
Right. There was a real feeling of being on a team, kind of. And the expectation was just, you'd be included.
You just assumed you'd be there.
Absolutely. There was this whole, infrastructure supporting it all. Schools, parents, activities. It created this space where you were just near people constantly. Lots of shared experiences happened naturally.
Yeah.
And because you were moving in these packs, like the source points out, it was sort of unspoken that you'd be
Yeah.
part of things. It gave you so much time together.
So much time to build those bonds without even really trying.
Exactly.
But then life happens, as the source calls it, the great scattering.
Yeah, that usually kicks in, what, around our 20s?
Sounds about right. Suddenly, everyone's off doing their own thing.
Different cities, different jobs, different timelines for big life stuff.
And that structure, that framework that held everyone together.
It just kind of dissolves.
And that's when this different kind of responsibility kicks in, right? For your own social life.
Mm-hmm. There's no track anymore, no template, no milestones. Everyone hits together.
You're sort of on your own deciding how to spend your time and who with.
It becomes a much more conscious thing, an individual effort.
You see it constantly, don't you? Those super close high school friends, college friends. Then they move.
Oh, yeah.
And suddenly scheduling a simple phone call feels like a massive project.
Right. Or that group chat that used to be buzzing just goes quiet.
Slowly fades out because everyone's understandably focused on their immediate life, the people right there.
And it's often when that feeling of loneliness can start to creep in for people.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Exactly. The source suggests we're kind of wired by those early experiences to expect that constant connection, that inclusion.
Yeah.
So when it naturally decreases,
Yeah.
it can feel like a failure almost, like we're doing something wrong.
Which can lead to feeling insecure or maybe trying too hard to hang on to friendships that are just naturally shifting.
Right. And this is where that let them theory comes in as a potential way to reframe it.
Okay, so let's break down let them. What's the core idea there? What does it actually mean?
Well, at its heart, let them is about accepting that adult friendships are, well, fluid. They change. It's recognizing that people's priorities shift. They make new connections based on where they are now, and they just won't always have the same time or energy for every old connection.
Okay.
And the really crucial part is not taking those shifts personally, not seeing it as a rejection of you.
So it's less about the friendship ending necessarily and more about it changing form.
Exactly. It's understanding this is just a normal part of adult life.
Yeah.
And it's actually a way to protect your own peace.
Yeah.
By letting go of that pressure to force things or keep them exactly as they were.
That feels healthier, giving things space to breathe and change instead of trying to freeze them in time.
Precisely. And the source really stresses that this scattering isn't just a one-off thing that happens after college.
Right, it keeps happening.
It's a recurring pattern. Think about it. Friends get married, they have kids, move to the suburbs,
Become empty nesters, maybe go through divorce, retire.
experience loss. All these major life changes can naturally shake up priorities and social circles again and again.
So the let them theory is about seeing that whole process as normal, ongoing, and not some kind of personal failure.
Exactly. It's not an indictment of you or the friendship.
Okay, I think I'm getting the hang of the great scattering and the let them theory. Now, you mentioned the source also gives us a framework for why this happens, the three pillars.
Yes, that's right. The three pillars of friendship. They are proximity, timing, and energy. And the argument is basically that when friendships drift, it's usually because one or more of these pillars has weakened or disappeared.
And crucially, it's usually not personal.
That's what the source emphasizes, yeah. It's often just circumstances.
Okay, let's take the first one. Proximity. What's the deal there?
Proximity is pretty straightforward. It's just about how physically close you are to someone, how often you actually see them, and the source really highlights how vital this is. Being physically near someone just naturally means more time spent together.
More opportunities for connection, shared moments.
Exactly. When you live far apart, staying close takes way more deliberate effort. It's possible, obviously, but that easy, natural connection isn't quite there.
And there was that study you mentioned from the University of Kansas.
Oh yeah, fascinating stuff. That study found it takes a pretty surprising amount of time to build real friendship. Something like 74 hours just to become a casual friend.
74 hours.
Yeah, and over 200 hours for a close friend.
Wow, okay.
Now think back to being young, like the source points out. We clocked those hours without even noticing.
Right. In high school, you could probably hit 74 hours with someone in like a couple of weeks.
Easily. And college.
Hmm.
Even more so. Living together, eating together, going out. That constant proximity just made it happen.
Which is such a huge difference from adult life, isn't it? Where free time feels like gold dust.
Oh, totally. You're
Yes.
juggling work, maybe family, errands, just life.
Yeah.
And the source even mentions that American Times study finding between 21 and 60, many people actually spend more time with coworkers than with family and friends.
So the people you have the most proximity to are often the people you work with.
Could be, yeah. Which leads to that interesting question the source brings up.
All right. If proximity is so important, why aren't we all automatically best friends with everyone on our team at work? We spend tons of time together.
Exactly. And that brings us perfectly to the second pillar, timing.
Okay, timing. What does that mean in this context?
Timing here is about being in a similar stage or like the same chapter of life as someone else. The source argues that even if you see someone all the time, high proximity, if your lives are in really different places, it's just harder to connect deeply.
Because you don't have as much common ground shared experiences right now.
Pretty much. That coworker example really drives it home.
Yeah, the author's daughter in those meetings. Awkward icebreakers about retirement plans when she's just thinking about the weekend.
Right. They spend hours together, probably get along fine at work, but outside of that, their lives, their concerns are just on totally different planets.
That disconnect makes sense. Different life stages mean different priorities, different schedules, different everything, really.
Absolutely. The source gives another example, too, with older family friends, people they genuinely like. But, the grandparent stage versus having young kids. It creates a natural difference in the day-to-day connection, even with affection there.
And again, the key takeaway is that this isn't personal. Friendships ebb and flow because of these practical things, like proximity and timing differences.
It's just life taking us on different journeys at different speeds.
Okay, so we've got proximity being near each other and timing being in a similar life phase. What's the third pillar? Energy.
Energy, yeah. This one's maybe a bit more intangible, but just as real. The source describes it as that feeling of connection, that sense that you just sort of click with someone.
That vibe you get.
Exactly. It's often hard to explain why you connect strongly with one person and maybe less so with another, even if you have things in common. The advice here is to really pay attention to that feeling, to trust your intuition. Do you generally feel good, energized when you're around them? Or not so much?
And this energy, this feeling, it's not fixed, right? It can change over time.
Absolutely. The source is clear on that. This energy is dynamic. It can grow stronger, or sometimes it just naturally fades a bit as people change and evolve.
Like the college roommate example.
Yeah, exactly. You might have had this great energy initially, but maybe if a smaller group moves in together later, the dynamic shifts. The energy changes. It doesn't mean the original friendship is worthless or over, just that it's evolving. The energy isn't the same.
This also seems related to what the source says about the whole best friend label.
It does. The source kind of gently pushes back on needing one single best friend in adulthood. The argument is that label can create, like, unrealistic pressure on one relationship. Friendships need room to breathe and change alongside everything else.
Instead of best friend, the source likes that idea of friendships for a season, a reason, or a lifetime.
Exactly. It normalizes the idea that it's okay, even healthy, for people to move in and out of close connection. Not every important friendship has to last forever in the exact same way to have been meaningful.
And what about when the energy just feels off? When it feels like it's faded, the source warns against trying to force it, right?
Definitely. Trying to push a friendship when that natural connection, that positive energy, isn't really there anymore, it can be really draining.
Leads to awkwardness, maybe feeling obligated.
Yeah. And that feeling the source mentions of being on the outside of a group you used to feel part of, that can be a sign the energy dynamics are shifted.
So the advice is to trust that feeling. Don't keep trying to force your way back in if it doesn't feel right anymore.
Pretty much. Accepting the shift might be better in the long run than clinging to something that isn't really working for anyone involved anymore.
Okay, wow. This has been really, really helpful to think through. So, just to kind of wrap it up, we started by acknowledging that adult friendships often feel different, sometimes harder than childhood ones.
Largely because of the great scattering, that natural process where our built-in social structures dissolve and people head in different directions.
Right. And the let them theory is offered as a mindset shift.
Yeah, a way to accept the fluidity, not take changes personally, and understand that people naturally move closer or further away based on life circumstances.
And the three pillars give us a lens to understand why these shifts happen: proximity,
How close you are physically, timing,
being in similar life stages, and energy.
that feeling of connection, the click. And when these pillars change, friendships often naturally change too.
And understanding this, really getting it, can lead to a more, I don't know, flexible and understanding approach, maybe even more proactive.
I think so. It helps you see it's not always about you or them failing. Sometimes it's just the pillars shifted.
Right. So maybe as you're listening, it's worth taking a moment. Think about your own friendships through this lens: proximity, timing, energy.
Yeah, which ones feel easy and natural right now? Are there any you're holding on to out of obligation, maybe, rather than real connection?
And perhaps think about, what small shifts you could make in how you approach things to navigate this sometimes tricky but often wonderful world of adult friendship.
Definitely something to mull over.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.